For centuries, official history tried to bury the Templars. Branded as heretics, hunted by kings and burned by the church, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ were declared extinct in 1312. But did they really vanish? Many believe they didn't. And the clues they left behind, carved into stone chapels, hidden in encrypted documents, forgotten murals, and ghost fleets, seem to whisper something no one dares say out loud. The Templars knew something, something far too powerful to reveal. Today we go beyond the myths and dive into 5 real artifacts uncovered across centuries, each one raising a disturbing question. The order didn't fall, it retreated. And maybe it still walks among us. But this is not a story of medieval fantasy or religious obsession. The places are real, the objects are documented, the texts are studied. What remains hidden is what they truly mean. Get ready to uncover a chapel that may hide a musical code, or the Holy Grail, a mysterious portrait that resembles the Shroud of Turin, symbols etched into a French prison, possibly forming a map or a final cry for help, a fleet that vanished without a trace, with the Order's treasure aboard, in a centuries-old document claiming the Templars never fell. They just vanished. So, do you believe in coincidences, or are these messages left for us to decode? Subscribe to Dark Reality Vault for more deep investigations like this. Now, let's begin. In the quiet countryside of Scotland, hidden among silent hills, stands a medieval chapel that defies time and logic. At first glance, Rosslyn Chapel looks like just another 15th century Gothic church. But once you step inside, you feel something strange. Not darkness, but a presence, a quiet tension, as if the walls are waiting for someone to ask the right question. Built in 1446 by William Sinclair, the chapel has been called a Bible in stone. But what's actually carved into these walls goes far beyond traditional Christian doctrine. All around are over 200 strange stone carvings, angels playing bagpipes, corn and cacti, plants native to the Americas. Yet the chapel was completed 50 years before Columbus set sail. Masks of men frozen in agony, faces surrounded by vines, the green men, symbols tied to ancient fertility cults. But the greatest mystery might be right above your head. On the ceiling are 213 stone cubes, each carved with a unique pattern. In 2005, 2 researchers, Thomas and Stuart Mitchell, claimed the cubes form a musical code, the Rosslyn Motet. They decoded it and played the melody, a haunting ancient harmony. Even more intriguing, the melody is based on pentatonic scales, which are common in African, Asian, and Native American folk music, not in medieval European hymns. Is it just a strange coincidence? Or was it a message carved in stone? A code left by builders who knew what they were doing? And there's more. Beneath one of the interior columns, known as the Apprentice Pillar, legends speak of a hidden chamber, sealed for centuries. Some believe it holds the Templars' final treasure, sacred relics, ancient scrolls, maybe even the Holy Grail. The connection between the Sinclair family and the Templars isn't random. Their lineage has long been tied to Freemasonry, and many believe Masonic tradition is rooted in Templar history. What if the Templars, fleeing persecution in 1307, did reach Scotland? What if Rosslyn wasn't built to worship, but to protect something? One final theory goes even deeper. Among the floral patterns of the ceiling is a layout that appears to reflect Earth's axial tilt, 23.5 degrees, centuries before the Church acknowledged heliocentrism. Why would a medieval chapel contain forbidden scientific knowledge? Could the builders have known more than they were allowed to say? Could Rosslyn be more than a church? Could it be a map to the real hidden history of the West? Or, as some historians suggest, are we just seeing what we want to see? That is the curse and the beauty of Rosslyn Chapel. It doesn't scream answers. It whispers questions for those who dare to listen. The year was 1944. Europe was at war. Bombs fell from the sky. In a quiet English village called Tumple, a woman named Molly Drew stepped into her backyard shed to collect firewood and found a face, a solemn face, human, bearded, calm. But it wasn't a real person. It was painted on wood and hidden behind layers of dust and cobwebs in the ceiling of her shed. The panel was made of thick oak planks, about 5 feet wide, with hinges and a lock. It had clearly been sealed deliberately in the rafters, as if someone, long ago, wanted it not just hidden, but forgotten. Molly had no idea what she'd found. She took the panel home and cleaned it, using common household soap. The original paint was damaged. But before that happened, someone took a black and white photo. It showed details that are now lost forever. The painted face, in red, blue, and gold, looked sacred. Was it the face of Christ? Or maybe John the Baptist? Just a few hundred feet away stood the ruins of an actual Templar chapel, founded in 1185. Not just a place of worship, a training ground for knights bound for the Holy Land. And that's where the speculation begins. What if the panel wasn't just art? What if it protected something holy? Its size and shape matched the exact dimensions of the Shroud of Turin, folded 8 times, a cloth believed to have wrapped the body of Jesus. That same shroud vanished from Constantinople in 1204 after the Fourth Crusade and reappeared more than a century later under mysterious ownership. A researcher at Duke University, Alan Wanger, identified over 125 matching points between the painted face and the shroud. For context, fingerprint ID usually requires fewer than 70. Could this panel be a replica made by the Templars for private worship, while the original shroud was kept hidden? A Vatican document from 1287 describes a Templar ritual where a recruit was shown a long linen cloth with the image of a man and instructed to kiss its feet. What if the chest this panel belonged to was built to carry the shroud? And what if the painted lid allowed knights to venerate it, without ever exposing the real relic? Unfortunately, only the lid was ever found. If the chest existed, it's still missing. Today, the panel hangs quietly inside St. Mary's Church in Temple. People walk past it without realizing what they're looking at, but it still watches back. A face that seems to ask, why was I hidden so well? And what else is waiting to be found in the rafters of some forgotten shed? France, October 1307. On a gray morning, hundreds of Knights Templar were dragged from their beds by the king's soldiers. The charges? Heresy, idolatry, sodomy, occult practices. The truth? King Philip IV of France was deeply in debt to the order and saw them as a threat to his power. As Templars were scattered across prisons throughout the country, 5 men were taken somewhere else. Among them was Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the order. But instead of being taken to the Pope, as promised, they were locked away in a remote tower in the Loire Valley, the Château de Chinon, also known as Coudray Tower. And inside that tower, something strange happened. While imprisoned, the knights began carving into the stone walls. Not names, not graffiti, but symbols, codes, prayers, and maybe a map. Among the carvings were flaming hearts, symbols of devotion or martyrdom, ornate crucifixes, some with spears piercing the figures. The name M-O-E, believed to be a cipher for Mole, and most intriguing, a symbol of 3 concentric squares, known as the triple enclosure. This strange geometric figure appears in multiple Templar sites across Europe. Some believe it's a code, a fortress layout, or a sacred symbol known only to initiated brothers. So, why carve it here? For centuries, historians dismissed these markings as simple prisoner graffiti. But in 2001, a document emerged from the Vatican's secret archives, hidden for 700 years. It was called the Chinon Parchment, and it revealed something shocking. Pope Clement V had absolved Jacques de Molay and the other Templars. They were not guilty of heresy after all. So why were they burned alive 2 years later? Some believe they knew their fate, and the carvings in the tower were their final message, instructions or warnings for those who might come after. Coudray Tower remained standing through the centuries. It later housed soldiers, Huguenots, even Joan of Arc. But experts agree. The carving style, depth, and content date them precisely to the Templar imprisonment of 1308. So what do they mean? A lost treasure map? A guide for reconstructing secret rituals? Or simply the silent cries of men who knew they were about to be erased from history? Men who chose not to scream, but to carve their voices into stone. Today you can still walk through the same gate Jacques de Molay once passed, the same narrow chamber. And if you look closely, you'll see the marks, still there. One message stands out, carved deeply into the wall. I ask God for forgiveness. Nothing else was said, but everything was. La Rochelle, France. The night of October 12th, 1307, as King Philip IV prepared his secret purge of the Knights Templar, 18 ships quietly left the harbor under cover of darkness. The next morning, the arrests began. Templars were seized across France, but the fleet was already gone. It was never seen again. No wreckage, no logs, no destination. The only clue comes from a tortured testimony by a Templar named Jean de Chalon. He claimed that a brother named Gérard de Villiers fled with 50 horses and 18 large chests, carrying what he called the order's treasure. Treasure of what? Gold? Documents? Sacred relics? Or something far more dangerous? The Knights Templar were not just warriors. They were bankers, diplomats, keepers of secrets. They controlled trade routes, castles, land, and above all, knowledge. Knowledge, some say, came directly from Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. La Rochelle wasn't just a harbor, it was a Templar stronghold, exempt from royal taxes, operating its own fleet. Records suggest they transported weapons, wine, scrolls, and gold. But when the purge began, nothing was left. Officially, the fleet was small and rented, but internal reports say otherwise. Ships built in Venice and Genoa, reinforced hulls, secret compartments, fireproof decks. What if the Templars were planning their escape, long before their fall? Some believe the ships reached Scotland, where they were welcomed by Robert the Bruce, a king excommunicated by the church. Others say the fleet sailed across the Atlantic, reaching the Americas centuries before Columbus. Rosslyn Chapel, remember that place, is often cited as proof, and some believe the fleet didn't vanish. It went underground, absorbed into pirate crews, secret brotherhoods, shadow networks far from the reach of the Pope or the Crown. Could this be the origin of legends about pirates with secret codes and invisible maps? The truth is, the ships departed, and they never came back. The Templar treasure has never been recovered, but the search continues, from Scotland to Ethiopia, from the forests of South America to the bottom of the sea. Maybe the treasure isn't lost. Maybe it was given to someone, or divided, or sealed in a place only descendants of the order could access. And maybe it wasn't gold at all. Maybe the real treasure was knowledge, forbidden ideas, ancient maps, sacred texts too dangerous to survive the Inquisition. At this point, the story becomes legend, but the question still drifts in the wind. More than 700 years later, where did those ships go? And who, if anyone, still guards the chests that vanished with them? Paris, 1324. A man named Jean-Marc Larmenius hands over a document to a trusted brother. It's not a letter, it's a cipher, written in archaic Latin, full of strange symbols and Templar signs. Its message? The Knights Templar were never destroyed. Today we call it the Larmenius Charter, and it claims that before his death in 1314, Jacques de Molay named Larmenius as his successor, a new Grand Master. According to the charter, the order continued in secret, a hidden chain of leadership passed from man to man for over 500 years. The document is real. You can see it. It's kept today in a London vault by a Masonic group claiming direct Templar descent. But is it authentic? When it was revealed in 1804, it caused an uproar. Some historians called it a forgery, the Latin too smooth, no official signatures, too modern in style. But others saw something strange. Spelling errors, consistent with medieval scribes. Ink from different centuries layered over time. Symbols instead of signatures, used by illiterate nobles. One name on the list is Bertrand Duguesclin, marked with a sign, not a signature. And other records show a man named Jean-Marc was working in Paris's Templar house in 1340, 2 years after the charter's supposed creation. Coincidence? There's more. The document condemns the Order of St. John, the Hospitallers, who took over Templar property after the suppression. It describes secret signs and rituals used to identify surviving Templars in hiding. And just 2 years after the charter's date, a papal decree bans secret brotherhoods, who dress alike, use coded symbols, and swear loyalty to each other. Was the church trying to stop something that had already slipped away? Some say yes. They believe the Templars went underground, merged with guilds, crossed borders, and eventually gave rise to modern secret societies. The same rituals, the same symbols, the same silence. And if it's a hoax, why does it echo so perfectly with real history? Why do the names, places, and details match the records? Why did it appear right when the world was rediscovering the lost mysteries of the Middle Ages? And if it's real, then the Templars didn't fall. They adapted, they hid, and they carried on a mission that might still be alive today, right under our noses. For over 700 years, we've been told the Knights Templar were gone, crushed, burned, buried. But today, you've seen 5 pieces of a puzzle that refuses to disappear. A Scottish chapel that may hold ancient music, or something more. A painted face, hidden for centuries, that might have shielded the most sacred relic of Christendom. Codes carved in stone by men who knew they were out of time. Ships that left in silence and never returned. And a secret document claiming the flame never died, only went into hiding. What if these aren't isolated stories? What if they're connected? Maybe history's greatest mistake was seeing the Templars only as soldiers. They were more than that. They were bankers, architects, keepers of secrets, guardians of something that was never meant to fall into the wrong hands. But what was it? A physical treasure? A spiritual truth? Or a knowledge so ancient it had to be hidden to survive? We may never know, but the signs are still out there, etched into churches, buried in texts, whispered in legends, carved into the eyes of statues that never sleep. Maybe the question isn't, where did the Templars go? Maybe the real question is, what were they waiting for us to find? The stones still speak, the symbols repeat, the path is there, but only for those who've learned how to see. And what about you? What do you think the Templars were really protecting? Leave your theory in the comments. We want to know what you believe. Subscribe to Dark Reality Vault to dive even deeper into the greatest mysteries of our world. And remember, sometimes the truth wasn't destroyed. It was just very carefully buried.